Hi guys, Jamie here from JB Motion. In today's video, we're going to be creating this cool CGI banner ad rolling down along the side of the building. We're going to be doing this all pretty much inside of Cinema 4D, including tracking our camera, creating the banner, and also applying the graphic. The graphic I'm going to provide for you guys in the description below. So let's get started on this. Here we go. Okay guys, so we're going to be starting this off in After Effects. We have to grab our video. You can download this from the description below. We have to bring this into After Effects and let's just hit Ctrl-Alt-G to interpret the footage. Where the frame rate is set to 24 frames per second, so that is good to go. We can drag this into this little composition icon here. That's going to create a new composition for us. Hit Ctrl-K and we can see we have a 1920 by 1080 composition, which we are now going to be able to export out as an image sequence. So I'm just going to cut ahead to around, let's say, because there's a bit of a wobble in the camera here, so I'm going to cut that part out. I'm going to go to around here. I'm going to hit B on my keyboard and hit Control-Shift and X, Control-Shift X. That's going to trim the comp to the work area. So this is what we're going to be dealing with. We're going to be exporting this out as an image sequence. So let's do a file, save as, and let's save this out to a place where we can actually find it. So I have a folder set up here. We'll just call this CGI banner ad. Okay, so that's our After Effects file saved. So now we can go ahead and go to Composition, Add to Render Queue, and we're going to be able to export this out as an image sequence. So let's just select PNG sequence on that, and let's go to our output to. I have a folder set up, movie sequence. I'm going to output it there, and I'm going to rename this. Oh, wait a second, before we do that. Actually, I almost forgot. If we export this as an image sequence and we are starting on frame, what frame are we starting on? Because we trimmed it, we're starting on this frame. It's going to be all messy when we bring it into cinema. We don't want that. So hit Control-K, make sure that the composition is actually selected. Hit Control-K and go to the start time code. Let's zero this out. And now you can see we're going to be starting on frame 0, so it's going to be nice and tidy once we're bringing this into Cinema 4D. Do a Control-S to save, and let's go and try that again. So we're going to add to render queue and set this to a PNG sequence and output to the place again. And we can just call this building sequence and hit save. So let's render this out. That's going to do its business, so I'll pause the video here while that's rendering, and we'll pop back in once that's done. Okay, so that's finished rendering. We can see our image sequence here, each of these frames rendered out as a PNG image. Cool. Okay, so now we can jump into Cinema and we can go to the, where is it, track layout here. Let's double click to create a motion tracker object, and then we go again to select the footage. So now we can go and look for the movie sequence that we just rendered out. It is in here, and let's just click on any of these frames. So just to remind myself that the frame rate is 24 frames per second, so we have to set that up to be 24 frames per second in our render settings in Cinema 4D as well. So open up your render settings and just type in 24. Let's also hit Control-D to open up the project settings and set the FPS down here to 24 frames per second. Okay, so we go back into the Objects tab, click on the Motion Tracker object, and we can increase resampling. See, it's kind of blurry at the moment. So if we just bring that up, and now we can just play this back, loading each of the frames into cache. That'll give us a bit of a smoother playback once all those frames have been loaded in. Once this is fully loaded into cache, we'll be able to start setting this up for tracking. Now, I have done this already, as I usually do before I do a tutorial. I'll kind of test it out myself to make sure I know what I'm doing and everything goes smoothly. So the last time I did isolate this area from being tracked because it's full of reflections and we don't want to be tracking reflections. And the same here, anywhere where there's reflections or even clouds, because they're not fixed. They're not going to give us a reliable track or anything like that. So we're going to make sure that we're going to exclude that. But I'm not going to create a mask to do that. I'm just going to delete track points from here if they do appear. I'll show you what I mean now. So if we go to our motion tracker object and we go to 2D tracking, let's increase the number of tracks up to like 600. And we can then just go to create auto tracks. So now we can see that we have some along here on the reflection. We don't want that. So let's grab our lasso selection, grab all those, delete those, grab a bunch of the ones here because these are also on these reflective windows. And I think these ones are kind of reflective as well, or at least that one is. Get rid of this one in the clouds. And that is fine. So, I mean, this is tracking a car, so, we don't want it to do that. So now we can click on track forward. Now we're tracking forward because we're on frame 0. If we were on the last frame, we'd be tracking backwards, but we're on frame 0, we're going to track forwards. Oh yeah, and if we were in the middle, we'd be tracking forwards and backwards. So let's click on this. You can see it's doing its business down there in the bottom left of the screen. So I'll pause the video and we'll pop back in once that's done. Okay, so that's finished. So if we just scrub along, you can see that we're losing a lot of track points as we go along. These ones are kind of staying there for a good long time for the entirety of this scene. But we are losing a bunch of them as we kind of scrub along. So what we have to do is go to the very last frame. And again, we're going to create a bunch of auto tracks. We're going to select the ones we don't want with our lasso selection tool and delete those. Another way of doing this is, as I said, using masks to mask out stuff that we don't want to be included in the track. But then we have to animate the mask and all that. It's just a bit quicker, I find, in certain cases to just select the ones that we don't want and just delete them. Okay, so that's fine. Maybe this one here, we don't want to track. So as we're on the last frame, this time we're going to be going backwards at this. So we're going to track backwards. So that's tracking backwards. It's doing its business. So I'll pause again and we'll pop back in a second. Okay, so that's finished tracking backwards. Let's have a look. We're holding on to more of the track points down here this time. So that's good. So we're going to do this one more time. This time we're going to be starting from around the middle of our frame range. So we're going to create auto tracks, and this time we're going to be tracking backwards and forwards. Let's just quickly get rid of the ones that we don't want to keep. All of those. Get rid of all these ones that are on reflections, and maybe a couple of the ones down here. Some ones here as well. And that one there. There's actually a few of them on the reflections actually all around here. So we get rid of all of these. Any ones that are on reflections we'll get rid of. And some cars as well down here. Cool. Okay, so now we're going to be tracking forwards and backwards. So let's go ahead and do that. Again, I'll pause the video while it's doing its business. Okay, so we should have enough track points now to give us a decent 3D solve. I mean, yeah, we have a good few here, actually. I was just about to say we don't seem to have very many of them here at this point, but there are a good few over here. And so I think we'll go ahead and do the 3D solve. Before we do that, we'll do a file, save as, and we will save this to the folder that we're working from, which I have it in CGI banner roll add. So we'll save this CGI banner roll add. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do the 3D solve and keep our fingers crossed that we get a nice, good solve on this. So we are in our solver, we're doing the full 3D reconstruction, and focal length, we don't really know it, but it is constant. So let's go ahead and do this now. So this is gonna take a little bit of time. So again, I'll pause the video and I'll pop back in once it's done. Okay, so that's finished. So if we deselect this now and if we scrub along, you can see that we have fully solved this bit of footage. We have our solved camera. So if we just deselect here, you can see our buildings here, or you can kind of make them out. And this is our camera. So a couple of things we want to do first is we want to, so if I create, I'll just show you, if I create a guy here, can't even see him. Where is he? We don't know. So let's just deselect the camera. You can see that he's basically popping in at world center, which is right in front of the camera. So we don't want that to be world center. We want to select a different one of these track points to be a new world center. So as we're going to be putting our banner graphic or our banner ad rolling down along this building, it makes sense to have world center on this building. So what we can do is we can click on our motion tracker object, go to tracker, constraints, create a position constraint, and then just let's select, we'll say this point here, and that's going to be our new world center. So now our figure is here, still at world center, which is now at that green track point there, or that pink diamond track point that we just selected. So now if we hit play, you can see this a bit better. Let's turn off our work plane because it's kind of in the way. So that's cool. So we set world center. We need to fix the scale because this guy he's 180 centimeters, average human height. So we want to fix the scale of our scene. So we can do that by clicking on the motion tracker object, going to tracker again, constraints, and we'll create a vector constraint. Where did our guy go? Okay, there he is. Don't know why he disappeared. So, okay, it's probably because I clicked on motion tracker. Even though that's new, I didn't know that actually happened. Anyway, back to what we're doing. We click on motion tracker, go to tracker, create vector constraint, already done. And we can select maybe this one and this one. And this line represents the x-axis, and I'm going to guess that the distance there, I have no idea. I'm going to just randomly type in 400 centimeters and see what that does for us. So now you can see our guy is a lot smaller, so that's a lot closer to what our scale should actually be. He looks a lot smaller now compared to the buildings around him. He's still a bit too big, but we won't worry about that. If you want to make him smaller, just adjust the distance that we've set from this window to this window. Okay, so if I now scale this guy up, so he's like a giant guy. Let's just go into it, make sure we're in model mode and scale him up. So now he's a giant. He's huge. So now if we hit play, you can see he's at world center and he's at the correct, our whole scene is at the correct scale. He's just a giant guy in our scene. Okay, cool. So let's do a file and save. Okay, so next I want to create this or recreate a building here for this building. So we'll create a cube and then we try and line it up, scale it up to match the building, because this is what we're going to be using to you know, to cast the shadow from our banner on and also to collide with our banner as well. So something that's going to help us to line this up a bit better. If I just delete that cube, I'll hide this. I'll keep the figure guy there for now. Something we can do is we can go to our motion tracker object, go to reconstruction, and we can generate a mesh. So we can set the preset to medium quality and just click on generate mesh. So I'll just pause that while it's loading. Okay, so that's finished, and it does take a bit of time, so just give it a chance. And eventually you'll get something like this. So if we deactivate the camera, you can see that we have, this is the building, and you can see that it's better if I just select it, select the static mesh, turn on X-ray. You can see that it is much better aligned with the actual building than our guy was. So that's going to give us a better idea for lining up stuff to this building. So I suppose we can go ahead and create the building now. So I'm going to create a cube. Or before we do that, actually, let's actually line up everything. If I just deactivate the camera, let's try and line up our static mesh better to our world axis. See the way it's kind of tilted, rotated. Let's try and line that up so that when we do create a cube and scale it up, it's going to be easier to align to, if that makes sense. So another thing we need to do as well before we do any of that is create a redshift camera, because we're going to be rendering this out in redshift. So all we have to do is select our solved camera, then create a redshift camera, bring it down, make it a child of the solved camera. And now if we hit play, if we switch between those, you'll see that we're getting the exact same results. So that's good. Cool. Okay, so now let's go back to what we were talking about, trying to align our scene to the Cinema 4D world axis. I'm going to do a save as, save this out as version B, just in case we need to go back to anything. In version A, we'll say. So let's grab everything in our scene, hold Alt G to put it into a null. So we're going to be able to rotate this null to line up everything better to the Cinema 4D world axis. So let's jump into a different view here. And let's just start rotating this, trying to line this building up with the world. So I'm just trying to get this kind of edge lined up with this green axis here. And that's kind of pretty much it, to be honest. So with that done, we can jump back into our solved camera. And now if we create a cube, and if we scale that up, so it's still not perfect, so we can mess around with this null as well. Our cube is outside of the null, so we can kind of rotate this, and it's going to look like we're rotating the cube, but actually we're rotating everything other than the cube. So if we jump into our top view here, let's see, where's our cube? Our cube is here. Let's just scale this up and then grab our null, and we can, with our cube in view, we can just try to line this up a bit more with our cube. Let's scale this down a bit more. Push it back. Now we can try and line this up better with our building. I'm going to adjust the rotation of this null here again. So you can see that I'm just trying to line up everything so it's easier for us when we're creating new objects. Okay, so now let's go out of our go to our default camera, and we can start resizing this cube to match up with our static mesh that we have constructed using the reconstruction tab in the motion tracker object. So let's jump back into our solid camera view. Let's turn on, if we select our cube, go to basic, turn on the X-ray, we can get a better idea of what we're doing. So I'm just adjusting the width here. I'm going to adjust the height. So you can see now as I scale this up, it's actually scaling up perfectly up along each of the vertical edges of the building. So we bring that right up to the top. And we can rotate our null, which is everything besides, everything other than our cube. We can just rotate that just a little bit to kind of try and, if I turn this cube, turn off X-ray mode, grab our null, and let's just try and align this a bit more. Actually, I'm going to undo that because it was actually good as it was. We'll turn X-ray mode back on for our cube. And that's pretty much our building set up. So that's good to go. So now we have a collider for our banner. And we have something that we can cast shadows on as well. Okay, so let's do a file save on that. So the next thing I suppose will be the actual banner itself. So let's create a plane. And the plane, we can align it to the cube by making it a child of the cube. So the cube, we'll call this building. And the plane is the banner graphic. And if we want to align this, we can reset transform, which is Alt-0, Alt and 0 on your keyboard. That's the shortcut for that. Let's take it out of the building, so unchild it. And let's go into our top view. We'll bring it to the front of the building and we'll rotate it 90 degrees. Hold down Shift as you're rotating to rotate that in increments of 5 degrees. So now we have that lined up and it's just in front of our building. If we push that back a bit. So we can zoom in here, you can see that we have just a small gap between the banner graphic and the building. So jump back into the solid camera, we can scale this up as big as we want it to be. So it's going to be nice and big and make it wider as well. And let's just kind of center this a bit more. Okay, so now let's just have a quick play of this. So that's our graphic setup and our building setup as well. It's not perfect, it's not lined up perfectly here, but again, the building is just, we just really need this face of this cube so that we can cast shadows on it and we can use it as a collider. So this doesn't need to be perfectly lined up at all. So that's pretty good. Okay, so we want to wrap our plane around in a spiral shape so that it can roll down along the building. So we're going to select our banner graphic and we're going to grab a spline wrap deformer. With the banner graphic selected, hold down Shift before you select the spline wrap. That'll automatically add it as a child of the banner graphic. So for the axis we want this to go along, we want to have this, looks like it's going to be going up from bottom to top. So we're going to go plus Z, the plus Z axis. And we need a spline that this spline wrap deform is going to reference. So let's just deactivate this camera for a second. Let's grab a helix and let's see where it is. We bring that up to where we want it to be. and we can start playing around with the settings here. A helix properties always confuse me, so we have to bring the height down to 0. I know that much. And we want to, let's increase the start radius, or actually we'll decrease the start radius. So something like that, and we can play around with the end angle to get it kind of wrapping around maybe a couple of more times. Okay, so let's tell our spline wrap to reference this helix. So drag it in there, and you can see that that's not looking good. So if we kind of play around with the axis here, see if we can fix this. So instead, let's play with the axis of our plane. And that's not doing it either. Let's rotate this helix 90 degrees. And let's start messing around with this again. Okay, so that's fixed it. So you can see that we need more segments anyway on our plane because it doesn't look great at the moment. Hit NB in your keyboard and let's increase the segments, the height segments of this. So that's looking a bit better. And we can position our helix so that it's kind of, closer to our building. We want to also align this. If we jump into our top view, it's pretty much aligned. I just wanted to align this with our building, so that's pretty good. It's aligned already, or pretty well aligned already anyway. So if we go into our solved camera view, so that's what we have. Okay. We want to go back to our default camera, and we also need to make sure that our spline wrap isn't set to fit spline, but instead it's set to keep length, because we don't want to reduce the length. We want the length of our banner graphic to stay the same. So we need to make sure that that's set to keep length. And if we adjust the offset of this a bit, no, we don't want to do that because that's going to mess it up. We probably need to adjust the helix itself. Let's bring down the start radius, or bring up the start radius, I should say. Something like that. Right, okay, so we are going to need a few more segments as well. Something like that. We can put this into a subdivision surface if we need to smoothen it out even more. So let's just have a look at how this looks. If we just kind of duplicate this, we'll drag this down, and we're going to turn off the visibility and all this of what we're just working on. This is the just in case we need to go back, because we're about to make this editable. We're going to connect objects and delete. Select middle mouse click on the top. It'll select the children as well. Right click, go to connect objects and delete. So that's no longer editable. But we do have this as a backup if we need if we need to go back. And we might need to go back, especially when you're setting this kind of stuff up. So it's a good idea to keep this backup. So we're going to right click, go to simulation tags, and we're going to grab a cloth tag. And we need to, so if we hit play now, that is just going to fall to the ground. So we want to fix these points. We want these points to be fixed so they're not going to move. So go into the dresser tab. Well, we need to select the points first. So go into point mode. Let's grab, or hit UL on your keyboard to get your loop selection tool, and let's select this loop. Go back into the cloth tag, dresser tab, and fix points. Click on set. They turn pinky purpley. And now if we jump into our solved camera, and if we hit play, this should unravel. Cool. Okay. So we can just turn off our building for a second because you can see we're getting some intersections there. So that's looking pretty good. So we can smoothen that out even more because there isn't really a lot of segments by just creating. I suppose we could go for a cloth surface and see what that does for us. So that's pretty cool. We can add thickness to this. We'll see how it likes a bit of thickness. It might kind of break it, but we'll see. If we just add a little bit of thickness to that. Let's see what that looks like now. Hopefully it doesn't break it. No, that's still fine. And that's looking pretty good. Okay, so that's looking pretty good simulation-wise, I think. Let's turn off our lines, NA on your keyboard. Okay, that's looking pretty good. We could add some turbulence, so it's kind of flapping around in the wind after it's finished rolling out, or even during it's rolling out. So if we go to the simulate forces, grab a turbulence force, and let's increase the strength and bring up the scale of that. Let's see what this does for us now. Before we even play that, actually, I'm going to get our building, turn it on. I'm going to turn off X-ray mode for a second. And I want this to be the building that our shadows are cast onto. But I want to duplicate this. And this is just going to be our collider. So if we right click on this building, go to Simulation, Collider. And if I just want to bring this closer to our actual banner graphic. Otherwise, we're going to get some intersections. If we use this building that we're casting shadows on also as a collider, we'll probably get some intersections. So it's just handier to do it like this. So I'm going to bring this closer to this. And that should be fine. That's going to be our collider. And we don't want to see that. We just want to see this, which is going to receive shadows. Let's do a file save. And let's go back into our solved camera. So now if we hit play on that, we're going to get some turbulence as well. We did turn on turbulence, so you can see we're getting a bit of flapping about on our banner graphic, so that's pretty cool. And it's also colliding now with the new collider building that we just set up. Super. Okay, so the simulation, I'm happy enough with the simulation. So what we can do now is cache that. Let's go file save as. I'm going to up revise again. I'm kind of getting into the habit of up revising instead of overwriting, just in case I needed to go back on an older previous revision. Good habit to have, I think. So let's cache the sim. So let's grab our cloth tag, go to cache, and I suppose we can just cache the scene altogether. So that's going to cache the simulation. And I'll pause the video while that caches out the rest of the frames. Okay, cool. So that has cached. So now we can just scrub forwards, backwards, and we don't need to wait for that to simulate every time. That's cool. We're getting some nice wavy turbulence in our banner graphic as well. So that's all looking pretty good. Okay, so let's go into our Redshift camera and make it active because we haven't been looking through our Redshift camera very much. And we can't see our background anymore. So let's fix that. Go to the background tab. Again, I'm doing a file save. Constantly saving, save all the time. So we're going to go into our Redshift camera, go to the background tab, and we go to click on override for the background, and we're going to load in our movie sequence here. So if we click on this, CGI banner roll movie sequence, let's grab this, say no to that. So now we can see our background is now visible and we can go into our animation tab. Just unravel that. Go to your animation tab. Let's select simple frames per second is 24. Click on detect frames, and now we have our movie animated in the background of our Redshift camera, which is handy. And that's all very cool. Okay, so we can set up the shadows now. So we want this. This is our shadow catcher. This is our shadow catcher building. And this is our collider building. So we want to right click on this, go to render tags, grab a Redshift object tag, go to matte, and we're going to override that and click on enabled. We want shadows to be enabled and we want this to affect alpha. So we'll do another file save. Now I had a Redshift layout set up before, but I just downloaded the latest version of Cinema. So that's gone now. I must import that back in. So we're going to have to go to Redshift render view. And I'm going to dock this over here. And I'm going to make this, give myself a bit more space. Getting some weirdness there. Tends to happen whenever I'm recording my screen. So just ignore that. Okay, so we have the Redshift render view. Let's hit play and see what we get. Okay, so we're not getting any shadows because we don't really have any light yet. Or we don't have any light at all. So we need to, we're going to create a dome light. And also, let me just save this layout as well. I'm going to do a file, save. I'm going to go to Window, Customization, Layouts, Save Layout As, and I'll just save this as my Redshift layout for tutorials. Okay. So, dome light. We are going to grab something for our dome light. So, we want to go here. And I'm just going to grab any one of these frames, like maybe the first frame. Say no on that. And then this is going to be used to light up our scene. So if we hit play now, so now you can see we're getting some shadows being cast on our building. So if I turn this off and on, you can see ever so slightly we are getting shadows cast on the building there. If I turn this banner graphic off, there's our shadows being cast. What we can do is actually go back to frame 0 to see this even more clearly. So you can see if I turn this off and on, there's shadows being cast. It might be hard to see, but you're just going to have to take my word for it. You'll see it on your own screen anyway. So that's cool. We have that set up. We want to brighten this up as well. Let's go back to original size at 100%. We want to brighten up this dome light as well because it's quite dark. So I'm going to increase the intensity on this as well. And we need to bring in a graphic because right now it's just a white blank canvas. So I have a graphic here set up. I'll put this guys into the description for you below if you want to download it. Or you can create your own or just get one off the internet. But I have this one here that I'm going to be using. So let's create a material. Let's go here, go down here. We're going to create a new node material. And this is going to be our banner. Let's open that up. And we can go to our folder here and just drag and drop that in. So if we plug this into the color like that, we can close that down and we can apply that to our banner graphic. So it's upside down. So to fix that, I believe we have to do something with the length. So maybe if we set the length V to -100, that is not -100. Cool. Okay, so that fixed it. It's still very dark, so we might want to increase the intensity of this, of our dome light, that is. And it's probably because it's so reflective as well. So if we bring down the reflection strength, bring up the roughness. No, that's not actually making it brighter. Let's see actually if we go into the material, do another file save, save. And if we go here, we might need to, okay, so it's already set to sRGB. Yeah, so that's already set to sRGB, so that's not it. So it is looking a bit dark. I don't think my original image was that dark. But anyway, that's not what this tutorial is all about. It is quite dark, actually, when you think about it. I'm sure if we created a light that was shining right up against this, so if we create like an area light, and we can grab a, let's see, we can go here, add target null, and we can grab the target, put it up to about where our graphic is, our banner. And then we're going to be able to move the light around, and it should be looking at the graphic. Let's move that back, scale it up. Yeah, okay, so you can see that that's giving us our color now. So it's just the dome light isn't giving us enough light because it's a very dark image. If I just turn that off, let's see. Maybe if we delete that area light, let's try instead an infinite light. And let's just kind of mess around with the rotation of this. No, I kind of like the area light. I'm going to go back to the area light. Obviously, I don't like it like this, but if I push that way out and make it even bigger. So I'll scale this area light even more. Push it out even more again. Yeah, it's okay. I mean, again, this is very reflective. Bring up the roughness of this. I kind of like the reflections, to be honest. I'm just not liking the area light, I guess. I'll turn it off again. Let's see if I can increase the dome light intensity even more. And we'll rotate this as well. Yeah, I think we are going to need the area light. We'll just have to keep playing with this until it looks right. So, okay, let's go to our area light and just try and fix this. We'll bring down the intensity. And I'm going to go to this and bring up the roughness of this. Not too much. I do like some of those kind of shiny highlights we're getting. Yeah, I think that's looking pretty good. We could go and add a bit of coating to this material. So if we go down to coat and just like bring that up. Oh, we're not rendering there. So now we're getting some nice kind of, if I turn that off, turn that on. I like the way it's kind of like really shiny on the wrinkles there. Bring up the roughness a bit. Not that much. Yeah, I think I like that. It's kind of cool. And also, if we go back a few frames, you can see that the material is on both sides. We don't want that, so we want this to just be on the front or the back. So let's put it on the front for now, and let's create a new material, a new node material that is just going to be plain white. That's going to be not fully white, but white enough. And we're going to put this onto our banner graphic, and it's going to be on the back, possibly. Hang on, let's have a look. If we adjust the, so this is the front, and this is the back. Okay, that's not working for us. Okay, so I'm getting a bit of trouble with the front and the back of this. It turns out that the clot surface is what's causing that issue, so I'm going to turn that off. It's not going to make much difference to the look of this anyway. And we can set this to be the back and this to be the front. Okay, so now you can see as it's rolling down, this is actually white as you'd expect it to be on one side. And then the other side, you know, is the actual graphic. So that's cool. We need something up here as well because, you know, we need something to give the impression that this is actually hanging off something. I'm going to grab this and move it over a bit as well, just a bit. If we go to our default camera, we can set this to only render the Redshift camera view. And let's turn off the background of our dome light as well. And let's grab this again and we can push this over. So that's a bit better, a bit more centered. Cool, okay. Yeah, so something for this to hang on. So we could get, I suppose just a cube really would do it. So if we grab a cube and we can align this to our building, so make it a child of our building shadow catcher, press Alt 0. You can see it jumped up there. Let's bring this up. I'm going to stop rendering for a second, hit File, Save, and let's position this now. So we'll bring this up here, kind of scale it down a bit along the Y-axis, the Z-axis as well, and the Y again, a bit more. Let's push that up and bring this and scale it up along the X. Okay, so we can kind of round the edges, add a fillet, turn on fillet, and bring that up a bit. And for a material for this, let's see what this is looking like first of all. Let's render through the Redshift render view, Redshift camera I should say. So that's okay. I feel like it needs to be rotated a bit. I'm just trying to line it up with the top row of windows. See the way it's kind of not really like aligned. If I just go into the cube and go into the coordinates, I can just slightly tweak this by holding down Alt before I click and drag. So now I get more finesse with the control of this. Yeah, okay, so that's looking better. It's looking more lined up to the top row of those windows. I'm not digging the color. It's white. And let's see what that looks like rolled up as well. Go back to frame 0. Yeah, it looks fine rolled up. So for the color of this, I suppose we could just go into the stop rendering. Let's go into our content browser, and I'm just going to grab like a plastic, maybe. Plastic, go into materials. I'll download. Is there like a rough plastic? Rough. Plastic rough. Plaster rough. Let's try. Okay, we'll just grab a plastic. Any old plastic, something white. Plastic rough. Okay, that's it. So if I double click on that, And then I'm going to add that to my cube, and hopefully this looks good. If it doesn't, I'm going to leave it anyway. So I think it looks exactly the same as before we added that material. Oh no, it's doing something. Hang on. Okay, so yeah, it's very close to exactly the same. I think we need to actually scale it up a bit along the z-axis. So we get like more of a shadow here underneath. Yeah, so that's looking pretty good, I think. Okay, so that's pretty much it, guys. We do need to bring this into After Effects and do some finishing touches, but I don't think I need to cover that in this tutorial. Color grading, I'm going to leave that up to yourselves, but we are going to go into how we can render this out. So we'll do a save. I'm going to close this down. Let's go into our Redshift camera view, and let's hide the materials panel as well, and hide the content browser. Stop rendering, and let's have a look at what we're getting in our viewport first of all. So this is it. This is what we're getting. It's looking pretty good. Nice simulation. And then the turbulence is doing its thing as well. It's kind of, you know, flapping it around as it goes through each of the frames. Gets a good close up there as well. Let's have a look at that. Yeah, so that's pretty nice. This is kind of going a bit wonky the closer it gets. Like if I go out here, it's not as wonky, but if I go closer, it's wonkier. So I might just kind of like rotate that and try and find like the happy middle ground. So like there, now if we go back, it's a bit wonkier there now. I'll go up a little bit. So we'll call that the happy middle ground. If I zoom in, then it's not as bad as it was. Okay, so this is looking a bit rough because we had this in a clot surface and it was like, you know, smoothing everything out. So I'll take this out, and if I put this into a subdivision surface, hopefully that smooths it out now, and hopefully we're not going to lose our white at the back. We're not. That's great. Unfortunately, the clot surface was messing up our materials. I don't know why. Probably a solution for that. I don't know what it is. But anyway, that's fine. So we can file, save this. And if we want to render this out, but if we go into alpha, you know, we don't want to see the background first of all. So we're going to go into our Redshift camera, go into the background and turn that off. So that's gone. So now if we press this, we're just going to see our banner, our little cube thingy, and our shadow, which is being cast here. And if you remember in my Redshift object tag, I had this effects alpha turned on. If I didn't turn that on, you can see what's going to happen there to our cube. It's not going to basically have an alpha channel. So we need to turn that on so that we're just going to see the shadows there on that. So that's pretty much it. That's ready to go. Let's go back into RGB mode and just kind of hit play on that. Okay guys, so we can set this up for render. I'm still not liking this. It's very dark, or it's very bright, I should say, this plastic rough. If we could darken it a bit. Let's bring this, let's turn off the, let's remove that so we can just grab the color, make that darker. I think that's a bit better. Let's see what that looks like up against our building. So if we override this now, let's see. Yeah, I'm liking that more. It's less like, it's a bit more subtle. So that's fine. I'm going to leave that like that. So let's turn that off now. File, save again. Saving it loads of times. Go into our render settings. We're going to output this, all frames, 1920 by 1080. Let's pick a place to save. So we're going to save it as a PNG sequence. We want to make sure we have alpha channel turned on. And let's find a place to save this. So I'll create a new folder. I'm going to call this sequences, and this is banner, add CGI sequence. So you guys might want to turn on motion blur. I'm not going to do that. I'll probably just add it in post. But if you want to go into Redshift, it will increase render times. Go to the advanced tab, motion blur, and you can turn on your motion blur there. Don't think it's necessary. It won't be very noticeable because this is far away from the camera and it's not traveling very fast either. So I don't think that's needed. So that's all good to go. So we can do our last file save and we can render this out to the picture viewer. So that is going to render away. Let's see what we're getting render time wise. So about 17 seconds a frame. So that's not too bad at all. So that's it for me, guys. I don't think I'm going to be bringing this into After Effects to do the color grading. I mean, unless you guys wanted me to, you can leave a comment in this in the comments down below to let me know you want me to do it. I don't think it's necessary. I think you guys can take it from here. But that's it for me. Hope you learned a lot. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.